This meeting of the Tyler ISD Board of Trustees is called to order. There's a presence of a quorum, and the meeting has been duly called, and the notice of the meeting has been posted in the time and manner required. Thank you all for being here today. The first order of business we have is public participation, and I do not believe there's anybody signed up. So, unfortunately, that won't occur. And moving on to continuous improvement portion of the agenda, we have a bilingual and English as a second language program evaluation. Dr. Crawford.
Anna Sanguin, our Director of Bilingual ESL, is here to present this annual report on our bilingual ESL program evaluation that we're required to do by, is it federal or statutory? Both. Just might as well say it's a flow through to the state. So we're going to turn it over to Ms. Sanguin and we'll get going.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, President of the Board, Mr. Washman, members of the board, Mr. Crawford, Dr. Crawford, sorry. So I bring here the information for our bilingual ESL program as required by TA and the federal programs. So a little bit about the information for our program. For the district demographics, about 23% of the students in Tyler ISD are actually ELs. So that's about 4,000 students. In the next slide, we can see how the students are in the makeup that we have during the different grade levels. The different grade levels. This information is about 10 to 12 days old, but we had about 23% of our ELs actually studying at home rather than face-to-face in schools. And the makeup of this was 62% of the ELs that were at home were actually in secondary levels, so that would be 6 through 12. I believe that this has changed in the past week for the better, with having more students at the school. To teach ESL students, the teachers have to be certified either bilingual or ESL. When a teacher is not certified, we need to either file a waiver or an exception. So last year, we filed for 2 bilingual teachers exemptions, which then actually got, the number grew bigger as the year went by. There were some resignations. And we filed for 37 ESL teachers. That means teachers that were teaching ELs but were not certified. This year, we are actually very, very excited to announce that we are filing 0 waivers for bilingual teachers. That means all bilingual grade levels are staffed with certified teachers. And we are filing 29 waivers for ESL teachers. According to TA, we do have a plan in place to help the students, the teachers get their certification, and that's what the professional development that we have, and of course it has the 2 components, something that is professional development, and then what we are going to work with the teachers on campus. The next few slides shows the Spanish proficiency that our students in dual language are acquiring, and we are really on track in the proficiency. So you can see this is the number of students are at the advanced high level. So you see the number is smaller in 1st grade, but by 6th grade we have 100% of the students are at the advanced high level in proficiency for Spanish. Same thing with English, with listening, I'm sorry. And then reading, it's a little bit, got a dip in 5th grade, and writing, it's a little bit also more all over the place. They're doing really well 3rd, 4th grade, so, and bear in mind that 6th grade is only 17 kids, the kids that are Birdwell right now, so it's a very small number of students compared to the numbers we have in other grade levels. TELPA scores, that's the rate of proficiency the students are getting for their language acquisition in English. The TELPA's target this year was 36%, and I'm very happy to report that we reached 43%. That was a 13% increase from last year. And so 17 campuses met the progress required, and 110 students moved up 1 level in their proficiency. The most improved grade levels were 6th grade and 8th grade with an outstanding 31 and 34% growth. And the other thing that I wanted really to share with you is the number of years that the students have been in schools. It's really very difficult to help progress the students that have been coded as long-term ELs, that's 5 and 6 years in the district. But we have made amazing progress, and that's a testament for the hard work that the students and the teachers have put last year, especially in the secondary grade levels. That was really, really brilliant. For the students that we exited in the program this year, that number changed for the better. We are at 129. We were able to exit 2 more, and this is a huge increase. Last year we only exited 49. So we almost tripled the number, so that was really, really good. And you see the component, how they are with bilingual, ESL, and parent denial. And we have more ELs because really the biggest gains were at secondary level. And then, teacher training that we did last year. We actually trained, where is the, we have the number there? Well, we had about 1,600 teachers that we trained. And of course, we shifted from in-person to online training. And the last slide has all the different trainings that we provided. Now, the last 4 have an asterisk in that one. And those are either national or regional conferences that actually, due to COVID, we were able to send more teachers because they were online, and so I was able to extend it to more teachers in the district. So that was a great opportunity to participate in national conferences. So we had about 10 to 12 teachers in the bigger conferences actually attend without having to leave the house. Okay, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for our presenter, or questions about the program, or comments? I'll go ahead and open it up.
Another piece of data that I always, it's not hard data, but what's our newcomer rate? Do you know off the top of your head?
No.
Okay.
But it's not very big.
Yeah, at one time, it was only like 5% of our ELL kids were actually newcomers. So that was one of the things that when I first got here and I found that we were not performing as well as we are now, that I always ask that question is, how can a place like a Dallas or a Houston or a San Antonio, who obviously has a large ELL population, a lot of those kiddos were first timers and newcomers. You shouldn't have that problem if the kids are, for the most part, are born here or grew up here or got here fairly early. These kids are not just now coming to us. They've actually been in Smith County or in Tyler for a while. So I'm glad to see that that's kind of taking care of itself, that our newcomers our lack of newcomers is not living up to the way that the data should project. Because if you are in an urban environment at a place of the valley that they're just now getting here, or if you're maybe at a place that has different countries represented, they're coming from Africa or Asia or whatnot. Because most of our kids, almost all of our kids are Hispanic, most of them of Mexican origin. And so it's or at least their families of a Mexican origin. And so those should provide us a little bit different opportunity to be successful, culturally speaking, not having to blend some of that. So I think that's a good anecdotal piece of evidence that goes along with how we're making improvements.
Yeah, thank you.
I have a question. The ESL teachers for whom we are filing a waiver for or an exception for, are all of them involved in training for the test, the certification test?
Yes, it's part of their professional development, required professional development to attend at least one of the sessions that we provide, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Are the bilinguals or the dual language students in these numbers?
I'm sorry, who's that?
The ones in dual language, enrolled in dual language programs?
Yes.
Can you just speak briefly to, I know that we've expanded some of those programs to other campuses. Can you just speak to maybe the success we're having with those?
Well, the rates of success that I showed incorporated what we call dual language one way, which would be the traditional
Right.
bilingual schools, and Birdwell. So that's why it's everybody. So the only one where I had the fewer students was sixth grade, because it's only Birdwell that goes to that grade level. The others are, of course, including Austin, Dixie, Bonner, Bell, and then, of course, Birdwell. So yes, the rate of success is consistently better than for the other programs, yes.
Congratulations, exiting more kids performing at a higher level in English proficiency. This seems like this is heading in the right direction, like seeing this kind of data. On the dual language program, a one-way program aspires that in fifth grade, it's roughly 50% of the time that a child spends in an English environment as opposed to a Spanish environment. What's that ratio in sixth grade?
In sixth grade is a little bit more English than it is in Spanish. They are taking in Spanish, they are doing their Spanish class, and they're doing a social studies class.
Okay.
The rest is in English, yes.
Have we ever considered a two-way dual language program that would be designed to also move English language speakers to proficiency in Spanish?
But that's what we're doing at Birdwell right now.
Right.
The two-way. So we have the Spanish students, the Spanish prominent students learning English, and the ones that speak English learning Spanish. That is the two-way. But we are only doing it at.
So I have a fifth grader in that program who's been there since kindergarten. It was explained to me that it was a one-way program. We had to sign a waiver since my son was not an English speaker and we don't have Spanish speakers in our house, we had to sign a waiver that it was a one-way program. Not that it meant that there were never any English speakers in the program who were learning Spanish, but that the program itself was designed primarily for Spanish speakers to move ultimately to dual fluency in English and Spanish, not explicitly designed for an English speaker to, over a 6-year period, transition, meaning the first couple of years, it was heavily in Spanish, which was great for our son. But I know that in districts that have an official two-way program, their participation rates in terms of being able to recruit native English speakers into the program seems to be higher than ours is.
Okay. We do, we're doing that now in Birdwell, and that's why you signed that waiver at the beginning. It's because we need, of course, we have the kids that are English dominant to learn the Spanish, but it is pretty much a mixed class. There are students that are learning English. So we are going towards that model. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Question. In regards to I'd heard about a pre-K program that was supposed to be starting possibly this year, where it was going to be dual language, I think, Spanish and English, and they were going to monitor them throughout their years of progression. Did we actually start a program like that this year, or is it going to be postponed because of COVID, or where are we with that?
We have bilingual pre-Ks. We
Okay.
just we don't test them for the progression because
Right.
they just started. And with kindergartner, we didn't really test at the beginning of the year. We are testing at the end of the year. We want to give them a whole year to learn some Spanish and progress in their English before we can produce data. Originally, we were going to do beginning and end of the year, but
Right.
because of COVID, we couldn't test them, so we kind of like started again this year. But yes, we do have pre-K dual language, yes, one way. Mhm.
Now, this program, is it going, you can only enter at pre-K, or can you enter at kindergarten and first grade, or how's it designed?
You can enter pre-K, you can enter kindergartner. We kind of draw the line at the end of first semester for first grade.
Okay.
Just because then, all the different phonics and all the different things that we need to teach would be too much for the students to catch up in the other language. So yes, but until the end of the first semester of first grade, students can enter.
Okay.
Is there a proficiency test where they could CLEP in? In other words, could you gauge them if somebody did want a midstream,
Yes.
even in second grade?
Yes, we do. We use
Okay.
IPT in Spanish because when we have transfers from other districts that say we were in a dual language two-way, we need to make sure that they have the level of Spanish before we let them
Okay.
in. So yes.
Good.
Mhm.
So there's a way in, but we prefer the first grade?
Yes.
Is what we're saying,
Mhm.
okay.
Right.
But
and-
the direct entrance, let's just say that we admit them, ends at the first semester of first grade. Then we do test them, yes.
And they stay in this program throughout the sixth grade, or is it high school as well?
I'll speak to that.
Okay.
So the way that the board allowed us to go ahead and flip Birdwell to a magnet school, with the understanding that that's gonna be our dual language magnet campus. Because the ultimate goal was, and the outcomes is, we wanted to graduate kids in high school that are
Okay.
proficient in both English and in Spanish.
Right.
They were bilingual.
Right.
There's actually AP exams that go along with that. There's also, some type of,
Seal of biliteracy.
seal of biliteracy, there you go. That's why we have her as the expert, that a student can also obtain as well. So we really wanted a rigorous K-12, true, authentic,
Right.
bilingual experience for Spanish and English. Because we just felt like those middle years, because of state requirements, and not everybody has an interest in that, there's kind of a gap in there. And so we wanted someone, if you're gonna do a bilingual program, K through 12, we needed a middle school experience. So we will be adding seventh grade next year at Birdwell for dual language,
Okay,
and then eighth grade the year after.
okay.
Okay. I do have a question, just in general, about our at-home learners and the success, there, and how those kids are doing. Can you speak on that a little bit? Are we having good engagement, or do we need them back so we can teach them?
No, we need to talk about that.
Okay.
There's no doubt that there's an issue, district-wide, in regard to 6 weeks grades. Let me get down here to the district level. It's a good question. I'm glad you brought it up. So, district-wide, failing percentage of students that failed at least one class is 34%. And let me break that down for you though. This is a little skewed for at school, because this was taken at the 6 weeks when the grades got put in. So Learn at School was at 26% of that. But that also included kids that came over in the 4th, 5th, and 6th week of that first grading period. So they had actually spent some time at home too, where they got so far behind it was hard for them to catch up. The Learn at Home failure rate was 62%. And then I've got it broken down elsewhere in regard to that. And what's interesting is when you start talking about some anecdotal data that goes along with it, or supportive data, maybe not anecdotal, but supportive data that goes along with it, you start looking at, let me find it. Here it is. Attendance data. The district's attendance is up 96.5%. And if you look at most of our campuses, when that includes the kids that are logging in at home, there's just no follow-up or accountability at home to ensure that they're doing the work and to submit the work. We need Operation Comeback. Our kids need to come back to school. Our teachers want them there. Our principals want them there. And I'm not going to say it's not working, but we certainly need this to happen, because we're also down 3,500 meals per week. We normally do 8,000 or 11,000 meals per week in a normal circumstance. Even our curbside pickup is not being accessed. So we do have a pending challenge, a pending crisis, not only just educationally, but economically with this. because we've got the systems in place, we've got the reach out from the one-way reach out from the school to the students. We're just not getting that support at home. And there's a variety of reasons for that. People are busy, capacity to be able to understand how to do that, or just apathy. It's all over the place. And so in saying that, we really want to push and try to bring them back as well. So there's your answer. Not doing very well in regard to kids that are, I've got that broken down by, or excuse me, I don't. Our crack team has that broken down by ethnicities and by learners, by ELLs, et cetera, by UIL participants, et cetera. And let me tell you what since Anna's up here, the LEP student failure rate is 40%
Of the at-home,
of the all,
of the all.
of the entire failure rate. I think I'm reading that right. And I am, yes.
Okay.
Oh, excuse me. 1,340 kids failed at least one course that are identified as LEP. So it's not 40% of our failures. 40% of the kids identified as LEP,
Okay.
are failing. Yeah, okay.
And back to the 62% number,
Mhm.
that number is the kids that at 6 weeks were at home. 62% of those failed at least one
Yeah, and that's
course.
actually, Mr. Bitter, am I correct in saying that's actually skewed low
Mm-hmm.
at 62% because we had kids come back in the 4th, 5th, and 6th week of the grading period?
Yes, sir.
That-
Some of those kids are listed
Right,
in the at-school failure numbers.
yes,
Even though they spent a significant portion of that first grading period.
right. So that was gonna be my next question. Is there any way to cull out the ones that did partial at home to start and just get a true sample of who the kids were in school the whole time, what that failure rate is versus, you know what I mean? I mean, because it would be skewed even more, like you're talking about.
Yeah.
It'd be over 62%.
Correct, and it'd be at school would be less than what it is too.
Right,
Yes,
yeah,
no
okay.
doubt, there is. Let's give you some examples.
Well, before we go on, does anybody else have any questions about bilingual and ESL program? Okay, thank you for
Thank
the
you.
report. I don't want you to have to stand up there while we talk about
Thank you.
a district-wide at-home
Thank you,
thing.
Anna, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to comment, I don't think it's any secret that kids do better when they're in front of a teacher. So we do have the educational component of this, but you mentioned meals, and we mentioned the other services that kids get while they're at school, and it's concerning to me what some of these kids are missing out on. And I think if it continues, to go down that road, it's concerning to me for those kids, educationally and nutritionally and socio-emotionally, and you name it. So I'll go on the record as stating that. Any other comments on that specific issue? Okay. Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and move on to our class size update that we have every year.
Okay, good. We have this every year. It's been I don't know how long y'all been doing it, but I know this is my 7th time to do it. And so we're presenting that to you. We've made some significant improvements on that over the years, and we really appreciate our campuses doing that. You know, this year's a little bit of an anomaly. We've fully staffed. I think we have 1 vacancy district-wide right now. Mr. Jones, is that correct? 1 teaching vacancy. And again, we've had years to where we're sitting here pulling our hair out looking at 20 plus, but we're very fortunate to have that right now. It's a smart ISS teacher. So Smart ISS has to be certified, highly qualified to run ISS to meet special education, pretty much special education requirements and guidelines, right? Okay, so that might be special ed identified. So that's the only vacancy we have right now. That's pretty good. But as it equates to our numbers here that was actually presented to you in your packet, we do actually have that. And so Tasha, I think you're gonna have a microphone in front of you, because Tasha's kind of the one that runs this for us and keeps an eye and monitors this along with the school improvement officers as we go forward. So we're gonna let y'all go ahead and talk it out.
Okay, this semester, or this was as of September 30, we only have 12 classes that are over the 22. Now, none of them are over with students there, because some of them are at home. In the actual classroom, there's none with over 22.
Okay.
So we have about 12 that are over, and it's only 19 students. I think last year we had 23, and it was 45 students.
Mhm.
So it's in much better shape, and I think some of these have even resolved since I did this. But if the numbers go up over the 22, when kids come back, we will put the aide in the classroom at that point.
So yes, for our new board members, one of you might already know and have experienced it, but anytime it bumps over that 22, we try to stick a teacher's aide in there for a little relief if that occurs.
Yeah, the way to look at this chart, I think it took me 3 years to figure it out. Was anything to the left of that last column is the number of classrooms. Is that correct, Tasha?
Yes, and then
Okay.
the students affected are
And
in the
then
last column.
On the very far right is the actual number of students that make you tip over in those classrooms.
We've made a pretty good run traditionally since you've been here over the last few years of getting this number down. And I remember before you came, it was, I remember a lot of waivers, one year specifically.
Yeah, and it usually has to do with bilingual. I mean, it's whether or not we can effectively hire enough bilingual teachers to keep us under that 22 to 1. And of course, this year, we've just been really fortunate that we were able to, I don't know why the magic happened the way it did, because we didn't get to go to Spain to recruit any. We did some stuff virtually. And then we had that geopolitical issue where they weren't gonna let anybody over. And then we finally got them all here, and Mr. Jones picked them up at the airport and drove them in. And so that really did help out a lot. I'm not gonna say it's luck, it's just one of those coincidental things, but it's important to us, it's important to y'all, and we try to do what we can. And it's not like every classroom's at 22 to 1. Mr. Newsom and I have had some conversations here recently about that, and I've got something for you to show you
Yeah.
in regard to what the actual numbers are, because they're not all just,
Right.
rigid
Oh, no.
22 to 1 across the board.
Okay, yeah, I want to follow up on that because I'm still trying to get a full understanding of how this 22 to 1 come up. TEA sets that number for the state, or who establishes the 22 to 1 ratio?
Y'all help me on when the statute went into place. They picked a random number out of the air, and it was really budgetary more than it wasn't on
Okay.
effective instruction for children to learn. They just, it might have been in the 80s when that happened. I can't remember, Dawn.
It's
Do you
been
remember?
a long time
Yeah.
since I've been here.
So, in saying that, 22 to 1 is the magic number. It goes from grades K through 3.
Four.
So, 4th and 5th grade, you see kind of a spike, and the way we handle that is
It's K through 4.
I'm sorry, K through 4, but in 5th grade, we had the way to handle that spike is we rotate classes almost like a secondary level. So 22 to 1 is set by the state. It's in statute. TEA used to enforce it, but then I found out the other day that he doesn't feel like he has any statutory authority, that it does reside at the board level to meet that mandate. So anyways, the District of Innovation that we have was one of those deals to where the board manages the 22 to 1, that the state doesn't have any involvement in it. And that's kind of how we've been operating since 2016, since the
Yeah, we
DOI.
do not have to report waivers anymore. We
That's right.
did before that.
So my understanding is that this board can set that ratio for our district. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I'm assuming you
Okay.
can.
Okay.
Um,
Question again is, okay, so in that ratio, do we look at factors related to low-performing students or ethnicity in regards to, you know, where they are and the number of students that go into the classroom, and then other factors that may have an effect on their educational ability to learn?
Sure.
Are those factors considered? Are there any factors considered in this 22-to-1 ratio at all?
On the class sizes, not so much, but when you start talking about budget, which is really
Yeah.
what drives the 22-to-1.
Okay.
You know, there's a balance there on how many people you employ versus how much money you have available to provide decent compensation packages. That comes out of the same pot. I think where you're probably gonna see more of an opportunity to reduce class sizes is what the principals do with their Title I dollars.
Okay.
And some state comp ed dollars. Well, how do they choose to spend those as well? I think is somewhere is certainly a place that we always encourage our principals to spend those wisely. But no, as far as, you know, that's just the balance that you gotta have in regard to deciding where you wanna spend your money. And I'm open to that if y'all wanna talk about it, but
Okay.
I still think an effective teacher in front of every student is the way to go, led by an effective principal at a campus. That class sizes, you have to get down to some pretty low numbers for that to have an effect size that's gonna really be impactful whenever you choose to do that. And I can get some research for you on that one way or the other.
Right. Well, that was my consideration, is that there are other factors that we should consider during those years that may make a difference in their academic outcome. Getting that solid foundation in those early years, those formative years. And I think that it wouldn't cost a lot of money, but I think it would involve looking at each particular class makeup as well as determining how many aides, no more than one, hopefully, that would be needed to make a difference. And I say that because I think that those factors need to be considered when we look at the outcomes and the disparity between the different ethnic groups. So I think that we could be aggressive in our district if we were looking and taking those factors in consideration, looking at that ratio and seeing if it can make a difference in the outcomes. And I think it could. I think it could, simply just from personal experience and volunteering within the classroom and seeing the difference it's made. So I think that that's something that if we have the option of looking at possibly changing that ratio and looking at the makeup of the classrooms, we take those things in consideration and maybe add an aide if we need to in those classes that have those numbers 22 or whatever. Or even less if we choose to do so. But I think if it's within our range to adjust that ratio, we should look at those, look at that number ratio and take those factors in consideration in those early classes, because I think it will make a difference in their academic outcome in those formative years.
So I'll ask this question in response to your wondering to the rest of the board. Where's the pot of money, or how do you go about that? What's the input on, if you're gonna get to those inputs, that's what we're talking about, is an input as far as how you staff your classrooms. How does that happen? Because if we have the available budget coming from the state and local taxes, what do you do on that? Do you say that you're going to increase the class size ratios at other campuses to meet that at these campuses that you're wanting to do it at? Or, I'm just saying, how does that, I know you might be saying, well, that's
Yeah.
your job. Well,
No.
I'm kind of throwing it out there.
Yeah.
Are you saying that the theory would be that you keep teacher compensation where it's at, but we're gonna lower your class sizes? I think if you give a teacher a choice for a competitive compensation package in 22-to-1, they're gonna take that versus paying state rate and low class sizes. I'm just saying, where do you think we would go about that? I'm asking.
Maybe some of the people that know more about the financial aspects of it,
Okay.
budgeting part of it, I'm just learning
Sure.
the ratio part of it.
Sure.
I can't address that. I think that, you know, we have people within our district that's very capable of looking at that and coming up with options for us to look at, but
Sure.
right now, I can't address it
Right.
from a personal standpoint. I'm thinking of it academically, looking at the statistics and everything else that I've been privy to in regards to understanding
Sure.
their outcomes. I hadn't taken the financial aspect into account. That's where it's gonna take a little bit more than me to be able to address that at all.
Okay.
And at least have the figures and facts and everything to try to work out a plan.
Yeah.
But at this point, I'm just throwing out an idea that possibly could work.
Sure.
And it would require a little bit more looking at all those factors, the financial perspective in regards to the class size, of course. And I think that that's something that those teachers would have to be aware of going into that concept in regards to smaller classes, reduced pay, you have an aide, et cetera, all that goes into play. But once again, our goal is successful student outcomes.
Sure.
And looking at that from that perspective, I think these factors have to be considered because they make a big difference in our outcome.
Sure.
So, you know, whatever we need to do, I think that we should be willing to at least explore the possibilities of looking at something a little different in those formative years than we do in the higher level grades.
Sure.
Because I think it will make a difference. And, you know, well, basically, it's proven that, you know, smaller class size, more intimate interaction, students tend to excel better.
Sure.
So that's what I'm looking at from that perspective. If we can do that and we have the liberty of doing it, it's worth exploring if we're looking at
Oh,
student outcomes.
If we had the ability and liberty to do it, we'd be already doing it.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
we can certainly, as the year goes on, budget something and come up with some models for y'all to consider. There's
Well, I
no
don't
doubt.
think we had the ability before, until recently, you know, 2016, we had the liberty of adjusting that number. So that's a relatively short period of time. So now we have that ability, so now we can explore those opportunities if we
Yeah,
can. and
yeah,
we're
we
willing to
couldn't
do it.
really go above 22-1. We've
Yeah.
always been able to go underneath it.
Right.
But even if you can go above it, I mean, you're gonna have to make a decision on which campuses are above that, and which ones are not.
And can I,
But- Okay, go ahead.
go ahead. If you-
No, go ahead.
Just a little historical perspective. This became a bigger issue when, in a previous administration, to meet budget, there were a lot more waivers and class sizes were getting, the board thought were getting really too large, especially at the younger years.
Right.
And my understanding from it was more budget driven. And, you know, then it became an issue with the public. I was getting a lot of calls as a school board member saying, I don't want my kid in a class with 25, 27 kids, whatever. And so I think that's probably why it keeps showing up on the agenda. At some point previous, it was a bigger issue. And my only other comment would be, I feel like it would have to be new dollars because we can't take away and water down, you know, something at some campus to give it to another if it makes the education worse, you know, at one campus to improve another. So it would seem like it would have to be new money. Is that what?
Yeah, I think before this thing we did this last year, where we were able to reallocate some reorg in preparation for what may be coming, or in order to give a better compensation package. If we'd have had that, we could have easily done some of the things that we're talking about here. Being creative, because that was a pretty good project for us, me and Tasha to work on. That money is kind of spoken for right now, but I do think that that's something you're talking about there, or some type of increase from somewhere would be, yes, obviously a whole lot easier for us to maintain the standard of education and staffing across the district, and then dedicate more dollars to go towards a campus that potentially could need it.
And I think too, we got to make sure that we're in charge of policy, you know. So what is the policy involved in this versus us trying to get into the educating side? So I think that's just something to throw out there too as part of the
Right.
discussion.
Right. I'm sure the
Good question.
policy would have to be changed if we're looking at the lower level grades versus the other grades. Policies affecting them would be somewhat different in the actual, in my mind. I'm seeing a flexible aid that would be in the classroom based on a number of factors, you know, the number of students, ethnicity, and their academic achievement level. So I'm seeing those factors coming into play in the lower levels as opposed to the upper level classes, because that's the formative years. So the policy will be somewhat different in regards to those individuals. And like I was saying, this is not going to change overnight. Student outcomes not going to change overnight, but it has to have a foundation somewhere to make a change. And I think that this could make a difference in regards to looking at the structure of the class size and the composition of those classes to see if that will affect student outcome. So that's why I'm suggesting this, and I'm just throwing it out for discussion and possibility of looking into it, because we are looking at making a difference in those students' outcome. And we know that those students, African American and Hispanics, are much lower than the minority, the Caucasian race within our district and within most districts. So I'm trying to come up with ideas that we can do within our district that may make a difference, and who said we could possibly be a model for other people to look at. So I'm trying to think outside the box to come up with possibilities of making a difference in these student outcomes. And
Yeah,
I think that those factors need to be considered when we look at the numbers and the class makeup.
Yeah, I think it's good to think outside the box when it comes to, the achievement gap issue. I think it's a financial, and not only a financial issue for us as a district, but also a spatial issue when you start depending on how much you reduce it, like how much can your schools actually, how many classrooms are there,
Yeah, right.
to use. And so, I think it's a good conversation, worth just doing a numbers run on, and that way we can actually see, what it would cost. And
Yeah.
I think sometimes our budget is especially right now so tight that sometimes
One,
budget,
one thing these numbers don't reflect are the aids that the campuses buy with their Title I dollars. And some of them sometimes buy teachers so that they can keep the numbers low. So there are aids, plenty of aids that the campuses buy with their Title I, and that's their choice to help the students in the classrooms. We fund the aids that go over the 22. But the campuses fund aids for the classrooms out of their Title I, which that's the
Okay.
purpose of that money.
And if we're also talking about, ethnicity, we're looking at impacting probably 75% of the students in the district. I mean, if you're talking about non-Caucasian, so that's a pretty good chunk there. I know there's other factors, and I understand it's more achievement gap related probably than anything else. So, Trish, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing. We were wondering when that was put in place, Dr. Crawford, and it looks like it was in 1996, the 22
96,
one.
yeah.
You said 86?
96,
96?
yeah.
Did I
Dr.
say
Crawford,
something as well?
you alluded to it earlier, the effect size in terms of the impact on student achievement for class size. It's been 15 years since I looked at that, and I don't know if you or Dr. Hanson remembers the actual number. The effect size, what I remembered was you had to get down to like 12 to 14 before it began to make a measurable difference in student achievement. Is that, you're nodding, is that?
Right, I mean, that's not a popular thing to talk about, but the effect size of the actual impact on student achievement with the lower class size is not actually that big, unless it gets down to 13 or 14 kids. And also remembering that we use the Title I funds, and we also use the state comp ed funds to help supplement for the kids who are more at risk in the schools that are more at risk. So we do all of that. We hire tutors for them and all the kinds of things with our special funds for that.
So you're talking about cutting classes in half before you have, based off research, a measurable impact on student achievement. You know, if I were to make a list on things that research says we should be doing to narrow the achievement gap that we're not doing at scale, it's extended time. Whether that's after school, that's got a strong academic component, or summer extended time. I know we're doing it, we're just not doing it at scale. And that, from what the research, as I remember it from 15 years ago, that's the number one thing that if we were to make a significant investment in, it would not be anywhere near the investment that cutting class size in half would be. But that's what the research shows, that kids who start off behind, you put them in front of an excellent teacher, all kids do better in that environment. If you're trying to catch people up, it takes more instructional time, and the only way to do that is after school or during the summer for those kids.
Or have somebody working with that child during the regular time.
Say, I couldn't hear-
Having someone working directly with that child on those particular areas that they have problems or difficulty in. The concept, we talked about the budget. What is the rate for the aides on an average that we have to pay aides to be in the classroom?
$9.70 or $9.70 an hour, is that about it? $9.97 an hour, so almost $10 an hour.
Yeah. right at
Beginning
10
pay.
Right at $10 an hour.
Yeah, beginning pay.
Okay. So, you know, we're not talking about a lot of difference. We're talking about shifting and possibly putting one or two based on these other criteria. And once again, looking at student outcomes, we have to take those things into consideration that affect student outcome. And we're seeing the statistics actually proving that the African American and Hispanics are lower, and we're not taking those things in consideration. We're not taking the consideration of the kids' test score in regards to looking at student outcomes and trying to make sure that they do have the assistance that they need. I know we have the after-school programs, but that's based on option. It's not something that they have to do. You know, so to make a difference, we're going to have to either beef up the after-school programs and encourage them to participate, making sure the parents buy into the program and get them in those programs to make a difference, or we have to change something during the regular school hours. So we have to look at those options. I'm not saying that this has to be done overnight. I'm saying that if we're going to make a difference in student outcomes, which is our goal, we need to be looking at those areas that make a difference that we have not taken in consideration, and trying to do something about that. So that's enough, I guess, for now, but I still think we should look at it.
And we've had this conversation over other agenda items too, and I will say that we are doing stuff.
Right.
We don't leave a poor principal at a school. We don't leave poor teachers at school. And so I think that we are doing some things that have not been traditionally done here in Tyler, Texas.
Right.
Now, some of the things you're bringing up that are innovative, we can look at those.
Okay.
But to say that we're not doing things to help kids at campuses, I just don't, I mean,
I
I know
have
you're
never
not saying
said
that, but I'm just saying there's been plenty of leadership
Yeah.
maneuvers to be able to improve schools
Right.
and to improve outcomes for kids
Right.
that are traditionally underserved in school systems.
Right.
And so, yes, we can continue to look at those. But I do think that a good teacher in front of kids is going to make a very impactful difference. That's proven. That is the number one indicator as far as student achievement goes, is an effective teacher in a classroom.
Right.
And so we'll continue to work on that, and whatever supports we can provide them, we can certainly keep having the discussions as we go forward.
I just want to make sure that no one is under the impression that I'm criticizing the district for what they've been able to accomplish.
I agree.
I think the
I
district
understand.
has done an excellent job in
Yeah.
regards to some things, but I do think there's opportunity for improvement.
Sure.
I always think that there's opportunity for
Absolutely.
improvement.
I'm not saying
regardless how
we
well
haven't
did.
reached it yet.
Okay? So I don't want you to think that I'm criticizing you because you haven't done a good job. I think you're doing a very good job.
I'm not taking offense to this.
So-
I'm actually talking about my
I know,
principals
but
and my
some people
teachers.
do, and I don't
Yeah.
want people to feel like I'm criticizing somebody and when they're doing a
Sure.
pretty good job, better than
Absolutely.
average even. So I'm just looking at ways to improve the system. okay?
Absolutely.
And I will continue to do that.
That's what these-
just part
yes,
of my
sir.
personality.
That's what these
Okay,
business
so
meetings are for. Yes, sir.
I'm here I'm gonna do it, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. That's what these business meetings are for, and we will certainly participate in that discussion.
Yeah.
Can I say something, please?
Ms. Atkins?
Thank you. I agree that it's the teacher. If you have an outstanding teacher and it's not the class size, it's the teacher in the classroom. And I firmly believe that a teacher does better than an aide. So adding more aides that are not qualified to do what a teacher does not help a child that's struggling. So just putting an aide there will not help that child that's struggling. And it is time. It takes 80 more hours a week. And so whether you take their PE away from them, if I'm a child that has to have tutoring during school time, I can't miss science, I can't miss social studies because I'm already behind. So then you want to take me out of my elective to do tutorials, and I don't think that's fair for a student. So we have to think, but it's not class size. I think we need to think of other ways, and our teachers are doing what they can and what they do best. They teach. I know that from firsthand. They teach. We had reading recovery, we had dyslexia, we had RTI where we pulled out kids. So it's going to take more than just saying, I need a small class size, I need an aide in there. It's going to take time, and it's going to take more than just putting 13. You can have 13, I've had 13 kids in the class, and some of them did poorer than when I had 35 in the class. So it's going to take more than just saying, lower the class size, put an aide in there. It's going to take more training and more time, and taking away their music or taking away their PE so that they can sit and learn during that time. That's frustrating for a child. It's
Right.
very frustrating for a child. So I agree we need to think of something, but lowering the class size, putting 20 aides in there that are not qualified to give them the phonetic skills. I love the phonetic science that we're doing, that we're trying to help at the lower grades. And so teachers are doing what they can when they can. You never hear them complaining. You never hear them getting upset with the kids. They want to try to do what they can, which is teach. They just want to teach. So that's my
Okay.
2 cents.
I disagree with that somewhat. I think that
You can.
anybody that has one-on-one attention addressing areas that they have deficits in can benefit. I just firmly believe that. I don't think that it always requires somebody that has a teacher's quote-unquote certificate to cause somebody to learn. And that's proven just by looking at kids that have parents that continue to help them on a consistent basis in the home versus kids that don't have it. So I think that that attention of one-on-one addressing areas of deficit makes a difference. I don't care if it's an aide, I don't care if it's a volunteer, I don't care if it's a parent. If you are addressing their areas of deficit, you can make a difference in their ability.
If you know what to do in
And
that area.
I'm not saying that we need to change the structure of the classroom in that aspect. I'm saying that we need to address the attention, the areas of deficit in the student with whatever time we have, whether it be in school or whether it be after school. Somebody needs to be addressing those areas of deficit to make a difference. Otherwise, we will never make a difference. So that's my concern. I don't care how you structure it, but the areas of deficit should be the major concern.
Duly noted. And we'll continue to work on those tier 1 or tier 2 and tier 3 strategies, which is really what we're talking about here. When they occur is something we really want to take a look at. I think you're focused during the school day, or maybe an extended part of the day. But I think, again, we've got a pretty cool summer thing going here, and I really want that to really pick back up again this summer post-COVID. We really got to get our community engaged to go into that. There's no doubt that Rose City Summer Camp, and that's why we opened up Bolter this last year. And we even told Mentoring Alliance to redesign that. I want that to look different than anything else we're doing across the city, because that's really kind of the hot spot for us of the kids we need to serve. And so we'll continue to look at that. Yes, sir.
Okay, good discussion. We're going to move on to the governance discussion to include board operating procedures and continuing education requirements.
So every year at this time on your board governance calendar, we have this discussion. This was a genesis out of an offspring out of Lone Star Governance when we went through that and graduated from Lone Star Governance. Reverend Hagery did a good job those years. I think that was right in smack dab in the middle of your presidency. So you have your board monitoring calendar here. I'm not going to go through every one of those, but this is the calendar that this board adopts or looks at and asks for certain reports to be given. Before Lone Star Governance, we'd kind of gotten away from that. Back in the mid-2000s, we actually had CRSS and Reform Governance in Action, the RGA with CRSS. And this is really what this calendar looks like. So we resurrected this calendar, and we're able to go ahead and provide you opportunities at regularly scheduled conversations and reports provided by the school system in regards to initiatives that we have on here and other things of choice. Most importantly, this is usually what occupies the continuous improvement portion of our board meetings. So at the very beginning of the board meeting, tonight was item number 4. You had bilingual English as a second language program evaluation. If you look on your calendar here in October, here on the bottom left, that's what you would get. You would also get a class size update as well, along with the BLADE update, the Blended Learning and Distance Education initiative that we initiated this year. Then, at the regular meeting, you will have goals that, board-adopted goals, 1.1, 1.2, 0.3, 2.1, 0.2, and 0.3 of our Renaissance beginning of the year assessment. Remember, this is what we switched over from MAP NWEA this last year. So you'll have a beginning of the year assessment report provided at the regular meeting in October. And then you'll wind up coming back and you'll get the middle of the year in March. And then you'll have an end of the year come at, where is it, Dr. Hanson?
Should be,
In May. So, okay. So, understanding we get that data back to us a little bit earlier, we could probably give you a preview of that, but it does take us a little bit of time to compile everything. We usually have testing windows in there of 2 weeks so that they can get those assessments done so that teachers and principals can figure out how to inform their instruction around that. We also have in-class updates like in June. These are all just different pieces of instructional data to where y'all can have an informed governance experience on the way to understanding what our assessments are as far as the STAR goes, which we report those out anywhere from August to September, depending upon what the state of Texas does as far as culling the data and then compiling it and getting it back to us. So we have everything from visual performing arts and athletics updates to accountability updates to voter registration updating to actual academic data for y'all. This is on this calendar. And there's my introduction to this calendar. Y'all are more than welcome to talk about it. July, we normally don't have a meeting. November is usually Team of 8 training. And then December is usually a pretty light board meeting as well.
Okay. Any comments or questions about our board monitoring calendar or our procedures? Is everybody familiar with it? I think it's good. Go ahead.
Just one question. I went through the operating procedures, assuming there are no proposed changes to it. I didn't see any amendments or markups or anything, so.
No, so this is this kind of a FYI today for y'all to take a look at. And then for the November Team of 8 training, we can make some adjustments kind of like as we go along with board operating procedures of this as well.
Question.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have a question regarding some area that's not on the agenda, we can still address that directly with you, can't we?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, always. Yep, no problem with that at all.
Just wanted to make sure I'm not out of.
He is our one employee, and he gets
I may-
questions.
I may
I'm
send you to
sure.
someone else that has a little bit
That-
more
that's just
more
fine.
depth than I've got, but
I just wanna
absolutely.
make-
Yeah, you're not
Okay.
restricted to this.
Because, you know, I'm new, I'm learning, so
Yeah.
it's going to take me a while.
Well, we really
To get caught up on all these
Well, we
areas.
really did this because we weren't doing a whole lot of academic reporting.
Well, I
We were
understand.
looking at trying to
love
find
it.
stuff to put on the
I think
agenda
it's great.
until we went through Lone Star Governance. And that really did help us on the accountability portion with our campuses as well. They're very aware of when these things are due. Our staff's very aware of when these things are due as well. So it kind of helped us get a little bit more organized.
Yeah.
back, what, 5 years ago, I guess, now that we've been doing it,
Mhm.
4 or 5 years ago.
Man,
I love it. Great.
yeah, it helps to have it just scheduled, so we always know what time of the year we'll be going over certain things, and we can get prepared in that manner.
Yeah, and y'all came on the board at a really goofy time, and we didn't even have we didn't have any STAR data, we didn't have any assessment data to go over. I mean, usually we have that about every other month, but because of the way we ended last school year, we're just now kind of getting restarted again, and then not next Monday, but the following Monday night, you'll actually get the first round of assessment of where our kids are at. I think Tyler High, from what I understand, actually came back with some pretty good data right away with mathematics and with English. So Mr. Lane brought me a pie the other day with that inscribed on the top of it from the lady that usually do it at the fair, and he was very proud of that. So it's still interesting trying to figure out where kids' gaps are going to be because of the shutdown. It's still compelling to me to get this data to really see what really is an issue, because if you think about it, I don't mean to talk forever, but I'm starting to get my juices going on this COVID recovery stuff. If you think about the shutdown, a lot of the hay was already in the barn, pardon my East Texas colloquial saying there, before we were getting into testing season. We just didn't get to go take the test, the assessments, to see where our kids were performing at. So they didn't miss a whole lot of instruction. Because you think about April and May, there's a lot of we really cherish some of the old school stuff here. In elementary schools, they go on field trips and do some more enrichment activities towards the back end of the year. So I'm interested. It's going to really be the retention that we're probably more concerned about than the actual, did they get enough of the curriculum in? I think we got our curriculum in. It's going to be whether or not they've been able to retain it without much academic rigor over the last 8 months.
I'm interested to see those two.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments before we move along from this?
Oh, I've also got a team of 8. Usually we have that in November. We do have a board workshop scheduled, so we're going to need to peg down we usually do that at night because it's a 3-hour team of 8 training.
Mm-hmm.
We can also remember a few years ago when Roy Knight came in and did the states. Yeah, we're not going to use him again. Mr. Knight did a good job for us. But you were able to double dip on that. You were able to get your team of 8 training and your 3-year, your 1566 every other year certification on that. So it's Lone Star Governance Light. Remember so the Lone Star Governance was like a select thing for just a few districts, and then they did it district-wide in Senate Bill 1566. We opted into Lone Star Governance early. We were an early adopter. And then they decided to take it statewide. And so we'll actually be able to double dip again on the same thing. So we'll get 1566 credit and team of 8 credit the same night.
Okay.
We just need to figure out what night that is. We'll stay off a Wednesday night, and we'll try to make sure we're not doing a Friday night or something like that. So we'll actually take a look. It might be another Monday. I think we usually do those on Monday night.
That November 5th date, we won't have the board workshop, but remember I sent out an email that has the chamber annual meeting
Right.
for lunch that day.
Yeah, Chamber annual meeting for lunch that day. We've got a table or two there. It is in person. They're also doing virtual as well. So we're actually going to have something on that date if you want to attend. But we also need to find another night to do the team of 8 stuff because it's going to be a 3-hour long thing.
Okay, we'll just get with this and everybody can
Okay,
figure
I'll
out.
try to figure out the date and then I'll send it out to y'all and then y'all can respond if that works for you or not. Is that legal? Okay. Just want to check with you guys.
All right. Well, looking forward to it.
Okay.
And we also have opportunities as well online for our hours right now until November, correct, Gina?
Yes, that will,
Yeah.
I think towards the end of October, that will go offline, but you can all go in right now. And there's also one of the trainings that you need is like an hour of child abuse, if that's a new requirement.
Okay.
There is a session for that
Okay.
on there as well.
So we can knock that out in our
Call us
task
if you've
meeting.
got any questions on that. I've got the number to one session.
All right.
You already got that session.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's a shame that we couldn't go down there as a board and do that this year, because it's always
Oh,
good
yeah.
bonding time and good time to learn.
Trish got that number too, but it's also stuff we've already discussed, the
All right.
science behind reading, so.
Yes. Well, good deal. Okay, I guess we'll go into executive session now. Do we have any action to follow? Marty, anything?
Do not have
Okay.
anything, not today.
Okay, we'll go ahead and run into executive session with no action to follow.